एवरीवन, मेरा नाम राज गुप्ता है। मैं अपने 5 साथियों विशाल कुमार, मोहम्मद अतीब, अनवर, धनंजय महतो और दीपक के साथ कोलंबस पर चर्चा करने जा रहे हैं। हमारे चर्चा का विषय होगा द एडवेंचर्स ऑफ कोलंबस। कोलंबस ने अपनी यात्रा अपनी 4 वोयेजेस में पूरी की। उसकी 4 वोयेजेस में हम 2 वोयेजेस की चर्चा करेंगे। चर्चा से आगे बढ़ाने से पहले हमें उस समय के ऐतिहासिक पृष्ठभूमि को जानना आवश्यक होगा। 15वीं शताब्दी के अंत तक आते आते यूरोप का पश्चिमी पूर्वी देशों के साथ व्यापार समाप्त हो चुका था। व्यापार को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए एक नए मार्ग की खोज की आवश्यकता हुई। उन्होंने नए मार्ग की खोज के लिए कोलंबस ने जिम्मा उठाया। कोलंबस को प्रारंभ में कई कठिनाइयों का सामना करना पड़ा। तब कहीं जाकर अंत में स्पेन की क्वीन इसाबेला ने कोलंबस को अनुमति दी कि वे जाकर नए व्यापारिक मार्ग की खोज चालू करें। यहाँ से उसकी प्रथम जल यात्रा प्रारंभ होती है। कोलंबस ने अपनी प्रथम जल यात्रा 3 जहाज़ों पिंटा, नीना और सेंटा मरिया के साथ 90 नाविकों के साथ चालू की। उसने अपनी यात्रा स्पेन के कैनरी आइलैंड से चालू की थी और वह ट्रेड विंड के सहारे, जो ईस्ट टू वेस्ट चलती है, पश्चिम की ओर आगे बढ़ा। पश्चिम की ओर आगे जाने पर कुछ समय बाद उन लोग को कुछ सूझ नहीं रहा था, कुछ दिख नहीं रहा था लैंड। वो काफ़ी हताश हो गए। तब कहीं जाकर अक्टूबर 1492 में उन्होंने सैन सल्वाडोर आइलैंड पर पहुँचे। वहाँ पर सैन सल्वाडोर आइलैंड पर पहुँचकर उन्होंने लोगों को ऑब्ज़र्व किया और वहाँ से अपनी यात्रा को आगे बढ़ाया। आगे बढ़ाकर वे क्यूबा पहुँचे। क्यूबा पहुँचने के बाद भी उनको ही निराशा ही हाथ हुई और आगे चलते हुए वो हिस्पैनियोला पहुँचे। हिस्पैनियोला से ला नाविदाद पहुँचे और ला नाविदाद पहुँचकर उन्होंने अपनी यात्रा वापस पुर्तगाल की ओर मोड़ ली और वापस पुर्तगाल आ गए। यहाँ से उसका प्रथम वोयेज समाप्त होता है। उसका दूसरा वोयेज 1493 ईस्वी में चालू हुआ था, जिसमें 17 जहाज़ थी। इस दूसरे वोयेज का उद्देश्य स्वदेशी आबादी को ईसाई धर्म में परिवर्तित करना था। उसने अपना दूसरा वोयेज सितंबर 1993 में कैनरी आइलैंड से प्रारंभ की और वह नवंबर 1493 तक वह डोमिनिका पहुंचा। डोमिनिका पहुंचने के बाद वह वहां से आगे बढ़ा और अपने प्रथम वोयेज के हिस्पैनियोला द्वीप, जहां पर वह चला था, वहां पहुंचा। वहां से जमैका, हिस्पैनियोला होते हुए वापस हिस्पैनियोला पहुंचा। हिस्पैनियोला पहुंचकर उसने क्राउन से अनुमति मांगी कि वहां से व्यापार हो सके। उसके बाद अनुमति प्राप्त करने के बाद उन्होंने अपने 560 लोगों को वापस स्पेन भेजा। वापस यात्रा में 360 लोग सरवाइव कर पाए, बाकी लोगों की मृत्यु हो गई। इस तरह पश्चिमी देशों का अमेरिका के साथ व्यापार कॉटन, कॉपर आदि चीज़ों से प्रारंभ हो गया। अब मैं अपने दोस्त विशाल कुमार से आग्रह करूंगा कि वह इस विषय पर अपने विचार व्यक्त करें। विशाल।
Hello everyone, my name is Vishal Kumar and today, as we know that we are discussing about the journey of Christopher Columbus that he sailed between the time period of 1492 to 1506 to the islands of America and Caribbean islands. So today we are focusing on the first two journey of Christopher Columbus that he sailed in 1492 and the second one in 1493. So to begin with, there are arguments about the geographical locations and the exact latitude of the islands of America and Caribbean. That these islands were known to Christopher Columbus before he actually started his journey. There were two stories about it that goes like this: that Columbus came to know about these islands from a from a sailor that was sailing to the African coast during trade. And another story was about it that Columbus came to know about the islands of America from a sailor during his stay at the Madeira Island of Portugal. And another one that influenced Christopher Columbus' view about his journey to the American islands was Paolo Toscanella, who was an astronomer and he used celestial calculations and positions of stars and moons and various maps to encourage Christopher Columbus to sail through these islands. Um, Christopher Columbus, born in 1451 in a Italian family in Genoa Islands, and there were speculations about his birthplace as well. Many historians believe that Christopher Columbus was actually a Portuguese, and there was a documentary that was documented by Timeline on the open source, and in that documentary they argued that Christopher Columbus never wrote a single work in the Italian language, and they examined the signature of Christopher Columbus, and they concluded that he was not an Italian and he was a Portuguese. Another one, historian Patrocinio Rubairo also asserted that he was an Portuguese. He was a Portuguese, and in his book, The Portuguese Nationality of Christopher Columbus, he asserted his view. Now, despite all these, Christopher Columbus was an outstanding navigator, and during the time period of 1480s and 1490s, when uh, the Europeans were traveling to various parts of the world in search of new sea routes and new sources of wealth and riches, uh, Christopher Columbus became a prominent cartographer in that time period, and many factors led to his knowledge of navigation. He know very well about the how to use the trade winds in his favor, and he developed many maps and routes to reach to newer part of the world. And he also used celestial navigation objects like sun and moon and their positions, and how to identify these new routes and to use them, and to use the trade winds for his benefit as well. So now we need to learn about why Christopher Columbus decided to travel to these new islands of America and Caribbean islands. There are many reasons, and many argument about this. The first faction of historians argued that Christopher Columbus was fond of wealth and riches, and he contracted with the Spanish king Ferdinand and Queen Isabella that he will get 10% of all the riches that he found, and the governorship of all the islands and all the lands that he would discover throughout his journey. Another argument was that he wanted to spread the Christianity to the new islands, and he wanted to spread his Christian faith to the new islands that he would discover. And another important aspect of his journey to these islands was the fall of Constantinople in 1453. And with the fall of the Constantinople, there were a need of new sea routes to travel to these island countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, China, and Japan, and also to the India, as they all well aware about the wealth and riches of these countries, of Southeast Asian countries. So they decided to find a new sea route to these countries, and to make these adventure. Vasco da Gama, he traveled to these countries through the west by along the Cape of Good Hope, while Christopher Columbus decided to travel to the western side, to the western side, to the western side to reach these islands. Now, during this period, Prince Henry the Navigator was also patronizing many navigators, and he was helping financially to the navigators to reach to new islands of the world, and he supported many navigators. So it also influenced the Christopher Columbus to find new islands and to go into the oceans. So he started his journey on August 3, 1492, with his three ships, namely Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And these ships were provided by the Spanish king and queen, and he was financed by the king and queen Throughout his journey, he need to face many obstacles and many challenges. And throughout his journey, there were storms and trade winds going against his course. But he somehow manages to overcome all these obstacles, and he reached the island of Bahamas, which he called San Salvador on October 12, 1492. And uh, on these islands he encountered the native indigenous people, and he gave the description of these people in his diary. And he talked about that these people were very handsome, and they had long hair and very well physically built. And there were cordial exchange of things among these people as well. They exchanged glass beads and caps as well. So they were friendly to Christopher Columbus. Now, during his stay and at these islands, he traveled from islands to islands. And during his journey, he explored the islands of Cuba, Hispaniola, in search of gold, but he did not found a specific amount of gold in these islands. So he built a settlement of La Navidad and left with 39 people on this island. And then he left this island to return back to the Spain. And during this, he enslaved some people and bring them back to Spain to show the people of Spain about it. Now, he started his second journey on September 1493 with 17 ships and over 1,000 men, which include sailors, artisans, and priests. The main aim of his second journey was to change these native indigenous people to the Christian, and to establish trading posts at their islands, and to basically colonize the island of America. And to achieve this, he brought around 1,000 uh, people with them. So he reached the island of Dominica on 3rd November 1493. And other islands explored by him were Antigua, Saint Martin, and Puerto Rico. Then he reached the settlements La Navidad that he established during his first voyage in Hispaniola. But he found this settlement in ruined conditions, and he came to know that the native people, they destroyed this settlement because of some misbehavior of his Spaniards. So he searched for gold and gold and other riches in these islands. And during this exploration, he established the town La Isabela in the memory of Queen, and introduced the system of encomenda at these islands. Another aspect of his journey was shown by Bartolomé de las Casas, who argued that Columbus made these people suffer, and he tortured the native people, he tortured the children, and he tortured the women of these islands. And he wanted to somehow capitalize all these people, and he enslaved them and brought them back to the Spain. And this started a new era of transatlantic trade, which were commonly known as the slave trade, and carrying slave from the island from the coastal areas of Africa to America. This started the era of colonization in these islands. And with this, he returned back to the Spain in June 1496. So with this, I would like to call Deepak about his view.
Deepak,
Deepak?
Yes, just a second. I'm visual. मैं दिख रहा हूँ क्या इसमें बैकग्राउंड because so
Yes, yes, you can go on.
तो आगे की यात्रा के बारे में मैं बताना चाहूँगा। क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस के जल यात्रा, या फिर हम यूँ कहें कि इसके वॉयज के बारे में जब बात करते हैं, तो मेरा पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इसके तरफ से जो मेरे स्टडी के दौरान एनालाइज किया गया है, जिसके बारे में मैं बताना चाहता हूँ, ये कुछ इस प्रकार है। सबसे पहले मैं बताना चाहूँगा कि क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस के बारे में, कि क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस 15वीं शताब्दी के एक हम देखें कि बहुत ही बेहतरीन नाविक थे। नाविक एज सेंस कि भाई अ, अ, नाविक मतलब कि जहाज चलाने वाले, जिन्होंने अटलांटिक महासागर में कई यात्राएं की। उनका प्रारंभिक लक्ष्य आसान व्यापार के लिए बहुत इजी तरीके से भारत और एशिया के लिए एक नया मार्ग खोजना, ताकि क्या कर सके, वो व्यापार इन देशों से कर सके। इसके लिए उन्होंने क्या करा, बहुत सारे अभियान भेजे, और अभियान में हम देखते हैं कि उन्हें उनके राजा या कैथोलिक सम्राट के द्वारा भी काफी ज्यादा हेल्प की गई, मदद की गई। हालांकि कई विद्वान इस बात से सहमत नहीं है। कई हिस्टोरियंस को ऐसा लगता है कि भाई उनका जन्म जो है जेनेवा में हुआ था, लेकिन उनका नाम जो है वो क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस है भी या नहीं, ये एग्जैक्ट पता नहीं है। ये डाउट है, विवाद देखने को मिलता है। ऐसा माना जाता है कि क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस का जन्म 31 अक्टूबर 1451 में जेनेवा में हुआ। और हम देखें कि काफी ज्यादा भूमध्य सागर से बाहर, मतलब कि जो हमारा भूमध्य सागर का जो एरिया है, उससे बाहर अटलांटिक महासागर में कोलंबस ने पहली यात्रा अपनी 1476 में करी, जब वहां पर उसके उसके यात्राओं पे डाकुओं के द्वारा काफी ज्यादा हम देखते हैं हमला किया गया। इसके दौरान हम देखते हैं कि वह खोजकर्ता के रूप में काफी प्रसिद्ध था। उसे स्टार्टिंग से ही हम यूं कहें कि भाई एक किशोर अवस्था, एडल्ट एज से ही हम देखते हैं क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस को यात्रा करनी काफी ज्यादा पसंद आ गई थी। कोलंबस ने अमेरिका की खोज के बारे में हम बात करें कि अमेरिका की खोज को किस तरीके से, वो भारत की खोज के लिए निकला, लेकिन गलती से वो क्या है, अमेरिका की खोज में निकल गया। कोलंबस ने उनकी यात्रा जो है स्पेन के राजा के द्वारा आयोजित की गई थी 1492 में, और वो पश्चिम की ओर, जो हम देखते हैं पश्चिम की ओर चले भारत के पूर्वी तट को खोजने के लिए। कई महीनों बाद हम देखते हैं उनका जो है, उनका जो दल था, जो उनका जो पूरे का पूरा ग्रुप गया हुआ था, वो आखिर में जमीन तक पहुंचा। लेकिन गलती से हम देखें कि भाई वो उन्होंने किसी और ही द्वीप की खोज कर दी, वो भारत नहीं पहुंचे, अमेरिका तक पहुंच चुके थे। हम देखते हैं कि कोलंबस जो है अपने तीन जहाजों को लेकर के वो निकला था, तीन नावों को लेकर निकला। पहला का नाम था पिंटा, नीना और सांता, सांता मारिया और नीना। तो इन जहाजों के माध्यम से वो आगे बढ़ा। हालांकि हम देखते हैं कि अधिकांश लोग क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस की तीन नावों को जानते हैं, लेकिन उनमें से भी और थे, जैसे कि एक दो और थे। पिंटा के बारे में भी हमें जानना चाहिए, जो कि अधिकतर लोग नहीं बताते। अब हम देखेंगे कि भाई क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस की यात्रा जो हुई, वो सेकेंड यात्रा 1493 में, अमेरिका की पहली यात्रा के ठीक 6 महीने बाद कोलंबस जो है क्या करते हैं कि वो अपने देश लौटते हैं। इस दौरान हम देखते हैं कि भाई अ, अमेरिका के अंदर हम देखें कि वहां पर कुछ एरियाज थे जो कि बस्ती, मतलब स्लम्स के रूप में देखे जाते थे। कोलंबस इन जगह पर जब गया तो हमें लगता था कि भाई कोलंबस जो है कुछ इस तरीके से गया है कि अमेरिका के मूल निवासियों के लिए शायद से वो कुछ बेहतरीन चीजें करेगा, बट उन्होंने अमेरिका के मूल निवासियों पर जबरन गुलामी का दौर थोपा। ये सारी चीजें इतिहास में बयां कर दी गई है। मैं इन तथ्यों पर ना जाते हुए मैं इनके तीसरे ओए, जो कि 1498 में हुआ, अटलांटिक महासागर के पार उन्होंने 1498 में तीसरी यात्रा करी। इस दौरान हम देखते हैं क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस को जो है लगभग हम देखें कुछ सालों के बाद ही 1506 में क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस की मृत्यु हो जाती है। इनका जो क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस का मैं अलग ही पर्सपेक्टिव पेश करना चाहूंगा कि उन्होंने अमेरिका के संदर्भ में जब यात्राएं करी, तो उन मूल निवासियों के पास उनका असर क्या रहा। तो मूल निवासियों के प्रति उनका क्रूर रवैया था, बहुत ज्यादा। वो क्या करते थे कि क्रूर रवैया अपना रखा था उन्होंने, और कई असफल आक्रमणों के बावजूद कोलंबस ने अपने पूरे जीवन काल में हम देखते हैं कि जहां जहां भी गए एक तरीके से उन्होंने मूल निवासियों पे अत्याचार किए, लेकिन इन अत्याचारों में उन्होंने काफी ज्यादा उपलब्धियां भी हासिल की। क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस के बारे में हम देखें कि बहुत सारी चीजें उपलब्ध है, परंतु मैं इनके तीनों यात्राओं के बारे में बहुत ही छोटा सा, ये जो मेरे से 3 मिनट तक बन पाया मैं उतना ब्रीफ समरी बता पाया हूँ। आगे का जो है मेरे दोस्त अतीब जी स्टार्ट करेंगे आगे के लिए। धन्यवाद।
So, good evening, everyone. I would be discussing about the historiography on Christopher Columbus. For historical scholarship, 1992 represents an important anniversary, the quincentenary of the first voyage of Christopher Columbus from Spain to the Western Hemisphere. Columbus has long occupied an important position in the cultural tradition of the United States. Although he never saw the mainland of North America, one of the holidays in the national calendar commemorates his first landfall in the Western Hemisphere. The country has absorbed Columbus into its national mythology, which is one of the few points where the USA and Latin America find common ground. One of the first histories of America, ironically, was published in London in 1777, just after the American Revolution began, and is not therefore a part of United States historiography. Nonetheless, the author William Robertson, a Scottish clergyman of immense erudition and generosity of spirit, influenced writers in the United States for at least two generations. He had read extensively in published works from Spain and elsewhere and provided his English speaking audience with current scholarship and a gracefully written narrative. His section on Columbus relied very heavily on the biography attributed to the explorer's son Ferdinand, as well as on the writings of the Dominican friar Bartolome. Once the new nation calling itself the United States of America broke free from England and began to invent its own history, Robertson's elegant narrative served as a model and a starting point. Robertson provided the precedent for beginning the history of the United States in Europe as a continuation of the centuries old quest for a new commercial routes and markets. He presented Columbus as a Geno's merchant mariner, the intellectual heir of every Mediterranean mariner who had ever sailed. Following Ferdinand's biography, Robertson described Columbus as a sincere Catholic from an honorable Genoese family, with substantial education and an early talent for seafaring. Blessed with an active, curious mind and a scientific spirit, he displayed courage, modesty, genius, persistence in the face of adversity, and steadfastness in a pursuit of his ideals. In short, he was the perfect hero. Robertson treated Spain and Portugal and their monarchs with respect but hardly with admiration. Columbus was a heroic individual rising above the political squabbles and grubbing of kings and queens. When the 300th anniversary of Columbus' first voyage took place in 1792, the United States was a new nation looking for its own heroes and its own anniversaries. Columbus became the first real American hero because of his legendary exploits and even more because he represented the virtues that the new nation liked to see in itself. From Philadelphia, Benjamin Franklin and other members of the American Philosophical Society sent an emissary to Spain to mark the third centenary. Jeremy Bell Cobb wrote a laudatory essay on Columbus in Boston in 1792, along with other patriotic essays on the beginning of United States history. Like Robertson, Bell Cobb relied almost exclusively on Ferdinand's biography of Columbus. Perhaps the importance of Columbus to the founding myth of the United States was more ferocious than anything else, a product of the coincidence of the tricentenary of his voyage with the recent independence of the United States and the creation of its written constitution. Nonetheless, the identification of Columbus as the first American hero persisted along with the identification of his virtues. As the first two decades of the 19th century saw the development of textbooks in United States history that consciously aimed to create virtuous and patriotic citizens. William Grimshaw's textbook on United States history, first published in 1821, were included in the 1826 edition. One of them praised his effort to Americanize foreign history for the use of her schools. Grimshaw used Columbus' story to exemplify courage, intelligence, and persistence in the face of adversity. Like other writers before and since, Grimshaw illustrated the vicissitudes of fame and fortune by stories of Portuguese treachery and Spanish ingratitude to Columbus. Portuguese treachery followed Columbus' attempt to interest King John II in his scheme to sail westward toward Asia. After turning him down, the king secretly outfitted voyages to make the attempt. Spanish ingratitude involved the rescinding of many promises made to Columbus regarding the profits and administration of any lands he found. According to the crown, Columbus forfeited those privileges by maladministration. For his Columbus biography, he was able to rely on a very important collection of documents published in Madrid in 1825. Its compiler, the historian Martin Fernandez, had gathered together 3 volumes of material on the early Spanish voyages of exploration as a part of his lifelong dedication to the publishing document collections. The first volume dealt primarily with the Columbus. In a similar manner, G.P. Quackenbos noted that Columbus was distinguished by a vivid imagination, lofty enthusiasm, high moral worth, great inventive genius, and a steadfastness of purpose which overcame all difficulties. Every misfortune that befell him, especially his disgrace for administrative incompetence, was either ignored or blamed on others, never on Columbus. The warfare and exploitation that devastated the natives of the Caribbean escaped notice altogether. One textbook's cover enshrined Columbus' voyage of exploration as the foundation of American history. The dates 1492 and 1776 framed an evocative display of books, farm machinery, mines, and various advances in transport and communication. The technology that was making the United States a growing world power. Some authors in the mid 19th century choose to give the edifying story of Columbus their own particular slant. Thomas de Arche, Maggie's Catholic History of North America, emphasized the faith and pity of Columbus and the Catholic nature of European exploration. McGee and others wrote to counter the anti Catholic bias that colored many historical publications in 19th century America. As the centenary of the historic voyage approached, other authors were willing to take a less laudatory view of Columbus. W. L. Alden published a breezy, irreverent biography in 1881 aimed at literate adult audience with a sense of humor. His flippant approach to serious matters cannot have endeared him either to Columbus supporters or to his detractors, but at least the admiral emerged as a believable human being, still a hero, but with serious human flaws. Other authors simply cashed in on the fourth centenary by publishing trash of one sort or another. In 1892, the fourth centenary of Columbus' voyage stimulated a flood of work about Columbus, including a great deal of serious scholarship published in Europe. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly, the most important was the massive recollection of documents published by Italian government and known as the Raccolta Colombiana. The Navarrete collection in Spain was also more widely known by then, and the American scholar Henry Harris published a well-documented biography of Columbus in French in 1884, as well as working with the Italian government and on other Columbus scholarship. In 1942, the 45th anniversary of Columbus' voyage saw the publication of a major American contribution on Columbian scholarship, Samuel Eliot Morison, Admiral of the Ocean Sea. An erudite sailor and a skilled storyteller, Morrison shifted the emphasis to Columbus' talent as a mariner and a geographical visionary, downplaying other aspects of his life and career. Morrison's biography became very popular, especially in its one volume abridgment. His picture of Columbus the scientist and a technician fit well with the 20th century development of American technology. And many authors of textbooks subsequently used Morrison to shape their portrayal of Columbus. There is even less hope that a consensus of Columbus and his accomplishment will develop by 1992. At least three levels of interpretation about Columbus currently coexisted in United States historiography, and there is very little contact among them. At the scholarly and semi-scholarly level, the results of research about Columbus are shared in academic meetings and professional journals. Most Columbus scholars would probably agree with the balanced portrait sketched by Winsor in 1892 and embellished since then by Morrison, and by a new evidence discovered more recently, nearly all of it by Europeans. Unfortunately, the most visible United States scholarship in the past decade has centered around the singularly pointless and unproductive controversy about Columbus' first landfall in the Caribbean. Columbus as an historical actor and the significance of the Columbian voyages have been largely lost in the shuffle. With luck, the landfall controversy will be forgotten as more important topics emerge from scholarly works now nearing publication. At the popular level, neither historians nor writers of books and articles about Columbus seem aware of the monumental scholarship that already exists. It is very common for educated and intelligent Americans to believe that very little is known about Columbus simply because they have been taught very little. Therefore, every new and resuscitated notion, however ill-founded, can find an audience. Depending on who is writing, Columbus can be a saint or a genocidal maniac, a converted Jew or a French corsair, an ecological rapist or a self-absorbed navigator. The historian Charles Noble's observation that Columbus is alternatively praised and belittled, groomed for canonization, and charged with piracy, lauded as a scientist and branded as an ignoramus, is no less true today than it was in 1939 when he wrote it. Without a mature foundation of Without a mature foundation of knowledge about the man and his times, it is possible to believe nearly anything. Fortunately, at the textbook level, some serious minded writers are trying to make sense of the complex issues that surround European exploration and colonization in general, and the character and actions of Columbus in particular. If they incorporate the scholarship that will result from the quincentenary, perhaps the next generation will be better informed than their parents. Until that happens, the image of Columbus in the United States will remain not only blurred, but blurred beyond recognition. Now, coming to the revisionist approach. According to revisionist historians and American Indian activists, Christopher Columbus deserves condemnation for having brought slavery, disease, and death to America's indigenous people. There had been national surveys using several different question verdicts indicate that most Americans continue to admire Columbus because, as tradition puts it, he discovered America. Though only a small number of mainly older respondents speak of him in the heroic terms common in earlier years. At the same time, the percentage of Americans who reject traditional beliefs about Columbus is also small and is divided between those who simply acknowledge the priority of Indians as the first Americans and those who go further to view Columbus as a villain. The latter group of respondents we find show a critical stance toward model American beliefs much more broadly. भाई हो गया आप समझ नहीं आ रहा क्या बोलना है एडिट कर देना इसे
मेरा नाम धनंजय महतो है। मैं राजधानी कॉलेज का स्टूडेंट। आज का हमारा टॉपिक है कोलंबस की दूसरी यात्रा। महत्वाकांक्षा, जिज्ञासा और धन के वादे के मिश्रण से प्रेरित होकर क्रिस्टोफर कोलंबस ने 1493 में अपनी नई दुनिया की दूसरी यात्रा शुरू की। स्पेनिश ताज द्वारा नियुक्त 17 जहाज़ों को एक बेड़े के साथ रवाना हुआ। उन्होंने अपनी पहली यात्रा में भूमि का सामना किया था और अधिक पता लगाने के लिए दृढ़ संकल्पित थे। ये यात्रा हालांकि उनके अभियान के रूप में व्यापक रूप से नहीं मानी गई थी। अन्वेषण के युग में एक महत्वपूर्ण अध्याय को चिन्हित किया और यूरोप विस्तार के उपनिवेशीकरण और भविष्य के लिए महत्वपूर्ण निहितार्थ थे। सितंबर 1493 में कैलिस स्पेन के बंदरगाह से रवाना हुए। वे कोलंबस के बड़े बेड़े, तूफानों और खतरनाक समुद्रों और अज्ञात खतरों का सामना करते हुए वे अटलांटिक महासागर और सागर को पार करके एक बार फिर से सहज यात्रा की। एक बार फिर से कई कैरिबियाई महाद्वीप में पहुँचे। इस बार कोलंबस का न केवल अन्वेषण करना था बल्कि बस्तियां स्थापित करना और नए पाए गए क्षेत्रों पर स्पेन संप्रभुत्व स्थापित करना भी था। धन्यवाद।